Very honored to be in your presence today. Excuse the accent, I can't help it. I didn't get out of Arkansas until I was 18 years old, and that's just because I missed the Fort Smith exit on the freeway and briefly went to Oklahoma. So I'm kind of stuck with this. So hopefully you can understand what I say. I have a bad problem of people hearing something that rhymes with what I say, and that sometimes gets me in trouble. But hopefully that won't happen today. Well, I'm very honored to be in your presence today, and it gives me joy that people would be interested in my journey, and so I'm going to tell you some things today that you may have never heard before, and I'll just kind of start at the beginning of my experience. I've been a chiropractor for since '83, ever how long that is, and I still am today in Arkansas, but I don't do chiropractic anymore. It turned out to be a touchstone for me. I'm all about holy divine healing, and how I got started with this, on my last day of vacation in August of 1994, while at my mother-in-law's bay house, I was given the assignment of cleaning up the yard. And I put it off to the last day because it was so hot and humid in South Alabama that time of year. I guess I was waiting on a cold front that never came. And so when my two sons and my wife went for their last dip at the ocean, I had to stay behind and clean the yard up. And I was about 3/4 of the way through mowing the grass, and I had been sweating profusely, and all of a sudden I quit sweating. I started getting chills. I started throwing up. Never had that experience before, and I knew I was in trouble. I made it inside the bay house where the air conditioner was going. My destination was to go lay on the bed, but I made it as far as the back of the sofa, and I totally blacked out, and I fell over the back of the sofa onto the cushions, which was the best alternative. The other one was the concrete floor, and as soon as I hit the cushions, I was going through a tunnel, and my last thought on this side of the veil was, oh shit, I'm dying, and but a little voice told me I would be just fine. And so I'm along on this ride, and I'm going through this tunnel, and on occasion a tunnel would come into my tunnel, kind of like the on-ramp on the freeway, and each time this happened I felt more positive, and after the sixth tunnel came into my tunnel, just like that, I was in telepathy, and I was in this location with these 57 androgynes in a circle. And androgynes have an eye right here in the middle of their head like Cyclops. And there were these 13 beings made out of crystal light that had heads and chests, but no legs. They were flowing torsos, and they had like loose clothing that was also lit up in crystal light, and some of the colors I'd never seen before. But there was this activity going on, and I knew everything about what was happening because I was in total dimensional reality of consciousness and telepathy. And there was this one of these beings that was kind of in charge of what was going on, and it was right in front of me in levitation, and it was turned sideways to me. And I was admiring its turquoise and pink jawbone, and about the time I thought how beautiful, it turned and it looked me right in the eyes, and it zapped me with this light that it awakened me to what I was here to do. And right after that happened, I was put back in the tunnel the way I go, and this time there's exits coming off of the one, and I get down to the bottom, and here's the earth. And I'm going back to the earth, and I'm very pleased to do this because I have something to share now. And right before I came on the earth, the holiness of life told me that all people on the earth were put here to learn to trust in their inner holiness, and that's the divine destiny of all people. And whether you're doing that or not, it doesn't matter what you say, it's your feeling that counts. And if you're doing fear, worry, anxiety, being critical, cynical, and doubtful in your life, you're demonstrating that you do not trust in your inner holiness, that you're trying to do it yourself. And that will get you nowhere. And you'll understand why as I go along here a little bit. And so 2 days back to my chiropractic office, while doing the same process, I was working on a lady, and the same leg length evaluation kinesiology I had used for years of being a chiropractor, all of a sudden I could connect with a person's inner holiness. And if your heart beats, it's in there. And so I started doing what the inner holiness started telling me to do, and the most amazing healing started happening that I never had happen being a chiropractor. And so it's the most beautiful thing. But I had to change my thought from me trying to figure out something to do to somebody to letting the inner holiness show, tell, and lead me, and me just being the servant and being a conduit and using my gift to do what it told me to do. And I could do far more things than I could with me trying to run the show. So I had a few humbling experiences. I'll never forget the first lady that came in, and I asked her inner holiness, she had a problem with her neck, and I asked her inner holiness how many causes were there of this issue, and it said 5,726. And then I asked how many of those did I have the intellectual capacity to understand, and it said 3. And so I knew I wasn't going to get very far with me running the show, and then I asked if this lady's inner holiness orchestrates the process, how many things have to be relieved to get rid of all 5,000 plus, and it said 2. And so I removed the fear of death from the dawn of time, and boom, it went down to 6, you know. And then I did the divine expression of love through Christ consciousness, and that totally made it go to 0. And so that was a huge teaching experience for me. And so this started me on my yellow brick road, as I call it. And every day that I've been doing this, the MO is to be a practitioner of the parable of Christ consciousness, which turns out to be our 5th level of consciousness. We have 7 as a holy being, only 4 as a human being. The 5th level is Christ consciousness, and this is a process of living where when issues, problems, and concerns are rising to your life, instead of trying to fix it yourself, do it yourself, you have to learn to surrender all of this to your higher power, which is your inner holiness. And then you yield to its will in your life and show up in your day, take your step in trusting your inner holiness, and the door to miracles will open into your life, and the most amazing things will happen far beyond anything you would have ever intellectually figured out on your own. So it was like a no-brainer, you know, hey, go with this thing, it works, you know, and it always makes you look good when you do the parable of being of Christ consciousness. So my healing field really took off. It took me about maybe 9 months to run all of my clients off. They all thought I had gone wacko. And my family had a couple of interventions on what the heck's happened to Dan. And so a client of mine took me to a shaman, and she was having a birthday party for her husband in Navasota, Texas. And she asked me to go and just take my table and do my gift, and that there would be lots of people from around the country that have healing centers and such. And so I did that, and man, it went like crazy. I couldn't believe it. I had this real long line. Everybody was wanting to do this, and it was like just the opposite of what was happening to me in Arkansas. And so I just had the most amazing experience there. And I had a lady that wanted to host me 1 weekend a month in Houston, Texas. And so that's where I started. Within a year, I was going to Houston 6 times a year, and then I was San Antonio, Austin. It was taking me 2 weeks instead of a weekend. And so I was able to float my financial boat and provide for my family. And then I started filling in the odd months with initially New Mexico, and then Indianapolis, and then New Orleans, which I was there the first of this month. And now I'm very proud and honored to be up here in Minneapolis. And so that's kind of been how I've gotten going in Holy Divine Healing. And now I'm going to tell you some things that hopefully is going to bring so much joy and happiness and fill your life with hope, because we really need that nowadays. And so I found out that my gift included being able to read the crystal lattice of people's spirit body. And what I found was a 700 million year recording that every single person has about an ancient world that existed on this earth before the downfall world and we became human. In this ancient world, we were holy beings of the Holy O, and we had three sources of knowing consciousness. That in the wholeness of our being, we have a trinity: our soul, spirit, and presence. Our soul is masculine, our spirit is feminine, and our presence is an androgyne. And so, I was raised Southern Baptist. My dad was a deacon. My mom sang in the choir, taught Sunday school. We lived right next door to the church. And so, I had to work through all of that. I read the Bible several times, and so I had to let all of that go in order for the Holy Order to show, tell, and lead me. And I had no problem with that, because quite frankly, I was raised in the day of hellfire and brimstone, and I never felt better when I left the church than before I walked in it. If I'd have had my choice, I would have gone fishing, but that wasn't an option. And so I had to go through all of that. But what I found is so amazing, and that is our true creation story. You see, there's a dawn of creation, there's a dawn of time. The dawn of time is when the downfall happened. This is when our mental body fractured and created this illusion of a future and a past, which is really a trick to keep you negative. Have you ever noticed that sorry's in the past, worry's in the future, and it's not ever either one of them? It's always now, isn't it? And so that's the way it was from the dawn of creation till the dawn of time. That distance is 5 times longer than from the dawn of time till today. And during that 5 times longer time, we were all holy beings of the Holy O. We had a knowing consciousness. Our ego body, your ego body's purpose is to monitor your soul vessel and give you consciousness and awareness. That's a wonderful thing. And in the original Holy Order of the Earth, our ego body, because our soul vessel was perfect and it had 13 components of divinity inside of it that functioned as a team effort, and through their team effort, blessed us to be holy beings of a knowing consciousness and an eternal life. And in that state, our ego body supplied us with knowing consciousness. It was actually ruled by love, and it had 3 specialty bodies of appreciation, approval, and acceptance that were integrated into the divine masculine of the soul. And our masculine being greeted all things in our inner and outer world with infinite expressions of appreciation, approval, and acceptance. It was the gentleman of the galaxy. And so it was a most awesome thing. Well, what I found out is that each and every person starts off before the neutral zone, which is actually before the dawn of creation. The neutral zone, you can think of it as what's going on behind the curtain at a play while the curtain is pulled. There's all this activity going on back there. That's the neutral zone. And when the curtain comes over, that's the dawn of creation, and then the play begins. But what goes on behind the scene, that's the neutral zone. And what I found out was that each person is a divine thought of a divine being, and the divine beings that we are a divine thought of are in the holy old temples of the neutron stars. the neutron stars is a most amazing place that knowing consciousness and gold are synthesized in the neutron stars, and they're actually the very same thing in different forms. In consciousness, knowing is the gold. And so we're all this divine thought of a divine being from these neutron stars prior to the neutral zone, and that makes our holographic seed. Our holographic seed migrates into the neutral zone and metamorphoses into 9 pulses of our creation that are in totally harmony with the 9 clusters of the all that is of the Holy O, which is our celestial outlay. And these 9 pulses are destined to become the 9 knowing centers of our brain, which worked beautifully before the downfall happened. But since then, we've all heard that humans use 10% of their brain. Well, that's because that's all that belief requires, because belief is a programming of authority outside of you. It never comes from within you. And so those 9 pulses in the neutral zone at the dawn of creation create the crystal lattice of your Holy Spirit, this electromagnetic field thing that we have around us. And then at your conception in this life, the only part of you that was new at your conception is when your divine presence and your spirit body metamorphose your soul. You see, that special point of creation at your conception in this life, boom, all of a sudden, you're one cell of flesh, and that one cell is pulsating, and around that one cell is a full-grown, complete adult-sized energy field that one cell grows into as you become an adult. And these 3 things, they identify what they are. The cell is your soul body, the energy field is your spirit body, and the pulse is your divine presence. The recordings of the pulse is the Akashic records. The recording of the spirit body is inscripted into the crystal lattice of this electromagnetic field. And that's the one I get to read. Other people read the Akashic records. And so all of the history of life from the neutral zone forward, we all carry a complete total records of all of that. And it is these records that are utilized in your session when I give you a treatment, that we go and find the solution to your problem, because you didn't have any problems when you were as a holy being of the Holy O. It's a fascinating thing. And so this is how life started. And I want to tell you the celestial outlay that is the home of our creation as our holy order. It's the 9 clusters of the all that is of the Holy O. And you see, within these 9 clusters are 62 million plus Oniverses, O-N-I verse, not a universe, a Oniverse. And within each Oniverse is 763 cosmos, and within each cosmos is 15 galaxies, okay? Your soul body is on galactic law, your spirit body is on cosmic law, and your divine presence body is on universal law. The same physics, sacred geometry that's about those celestial bodies is exactly what we are as a microcosm of all of that. And to top that off, there's 3 expressions of the natural world of creation that is expressed through this trinity of our wholeness. Our divine presence is expressed as holograms. Our spirit body is expressed as microcosms of a cosmos, and our soul body is expressed as a fractal code. And so holograms, fractals, and microcosms is the patterning of the natural world that encompasses the trinity of our wholeness. And when the downfall happened, the downfall will tell you this. We live 700 million years in this holy order in a 13-dimensional matrix of heaven on earth. And somewhere along the way, we got bored with this 13-dimensional matrix. We found it to be confining, and we all wanted an expansion of this matrix. We did not understand that you cannot expand a matrix. You have to have the total concept of a matrix in mind when the first stone is laid. So once it's made, you can't expand it, but you can disassemble them and make new ones. We did not understand that either. We wanted this expansion so bad that we broke our brown ray, and that brown ray is what anchors our spirit body to our root chakra. And this necessitated a need that we acquire understanding to go with our knowing. The downfall world is the school of understanding. It was brought into this earth from a system outside the 9 clusters, from a system of one. The downfall world is the model of one, and it came into this planet as a planet of 87 life forms that were to run this school of understanding. And they were brought in here by the school or by the plan of grand design in order to educate us with understanding. And you know, understanding lessons are experiential, and they can be quite traumatic. I mean, you understand a stove is hot because you touched it, you know. And so we've been in this downfall world thing, going through incarnations. The universe broke off of this Omniverse. The universe is 1/10 almost exactly of this Omniverse, and took 76 cosmos with it. And the whole downfall world was confined to the universe. And all aspects of our soul, spirit, and presence were broken down into their basic components. Our knowing consciousness was removed. And what happened, when the universe separated from this Omniverse, we no longer could receive information from our divine presence. That knowing source of our 9 functioning components of our brain went dormant. And Atlantis sank, and that fractured our spirit body. And all aspects of belief generators come from the fracturing of our spirit body. And that caused our attitude to no longer be fueled by the 9 knowing centers of our brain, but to actually be controlled by our negative ego. And what happened to the soul body? Our soul vessel got fractured, and our 13 components of divinity went outside of us, and they were spectrumized in a totem pole called the hierarchy of one. Our God particle went to the top, our Elohim particle was second, our Archangel, Angel, Ascended Master, Earth Goddess, right on down this totem pole. And at the very bottom is this fractured, empty soul vessel, and that's what self is. And to be of self is the human condition. And you see, when that soul vessel got fractured, the ego body that monitors the soul vessel, it went to the negative. It became ruled by fear, and its purpose became to defend yourself. And the way that the negative ego defends yourself is by controlling your consciousness through a programming known as belief. And the negative ego of each individual defends and justifies the belief system it imposes on you by doling out in a daily dose of fear, pain, and punishment. Fear creates anxiety and worry. Pain creates depression and anger, and punishment creates suffering. If you feel those things in your life on any given day, you are in your human condition, and your negative ego, through its belief complex, is controlling your being, and you're trying to figure out your life's problems through yourself. And you're going to get a daily butt kicking from that. And people that cross your beliefs, they better watch out, because you're going to go off on them too, you see. And so this is the human condition. And So that's where things stood for the longest time. When I got my gift in '94, the earth was in the third paradigm. We were still in the Piscean age. The Piscean age has a linear timeline and a third dimensional grid system. Belief consciousness was nurtured and supported as the culture of this earth. A great effort by many wonderful people before, in that time and before, could cause very little change. You just couldn't change things when the culture of the earth nurtured and supported belief consciousness. And but everything has changed now. You know, I worked in the third paradigm. We were all born, except for the youngsters here, in the third paradigm. And we got in 1987. We'll go back to that point when the harmonic convergence occurred. Things started stacking up in our favor so that things could be changed. The harmonic convergence started in 87, and then in 03, the Akashic beam quit mutating. That's what set off the downfall on the earth. And then the paradigms of higher consciousness started integrating the earth grid, starting off with the fourth paradigm. We haven't had a paradigm shift in 2,000 years. And then within a year, the fifth paradigm came in. And then the next year, 3 paradigms. I mean, we were on this roll. And we got all the way up to Christmas of 2011, and the 15th paradigm came in. And then over the next 6 months, from Christmas of 2011 to May of 2012, we had 10 exponential. We went from 15, 69, 177, 999, 8 to the power of 5 to the power of 7, 9 to the power of 7, 15 to the power of 7, 69 to the power of 7, 177 to the power of 7, and finally 999 to the power of 7. Paradigm came in on May the 6th of 2012. And this completed the paradigms of higher consciousness integrating the earth grid. Now let me define for you here what a paradigm is. It's not the same thing as a dimension. A paradigm is a reality of consciousness. A dimension is a little sliver of that, and it's like a cake. The cake is a paradigm. The ingredients that made the cake are dimensions. And the numbers I just quoted you are how many dimensions goes into the paradigm that creates that reality of consciousness. So that's the difference between a paradigm and a dimension, okay? Okay, so we're on this roll. Incredible things are happening, and then we get to the end of the Mayan calendar. You remember that in December of 2012? Well, the very next day, the Aquarian age begins, a whole new age. An age is 5,125 years long. And so the Piscean age with that linear timeline and third dimensional grid system had been here for 5,125,000 years. And you know, when you consider that the average person has had between 6 and 12 million incarnations in the downfall world, and all of the human carnage created in each downfall of low consciousness, and there's a lot, was actually stored into our underworlds. It was a very toxic dump. And yet, our underworlds are very, very important in creating our levels of consciousness. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And so, September of 2012, an amazing thing happened. And you know, I always check celestial events. Do I have some kind of service to do? And it had told me no 20 times up until the day that that this was going to happen. And me and my wife are standing out in the street in front of our house watching the eclipse start. And as soon as it starts, I get the command to get to my workstation, and I started doing this process that it told me to do, and right in the middle of it, on the dark side of the moon, there was this big switch that was it was switched, and it had been turned off, and it turned on. And this switch started a 6-year exodus of the downfall world off of the planet. So from this month, we have 4 years left of this downfall world exiting the planet. And we have 4 years left of the new holy old earth filling the void of the exiting downfall world. And so this is amazing what's happening. And you know, once the Aquarian age came in and the old linear timeline was changed for an exponential time-space coordinate system, which starts at the 15th paradigm, you know, which is actually 100 times more conscious than the original holy old earth of the 13th paradigm of heaven on earth. And this exponential timeline is the same number system I quoted you a while ago that starts at 15, 69, 177, 999, and etc. And this is a new time coordinate system of the Aquarian age, and the old third dimensional grid system of the Piscean age was exchanged for a 999 to the power of 7 dimensional paradigm that the earth was now going to nurture and support, because it is the age of the earth that determines what the earth culture will nurture and support. So no longer was belief consciousness and being dominated by authority outside of you, that was no longer in vogue here. It was no longer the way of the world. And what's the way of the world now is for all people that will get out of their head where their fears and beliefs reside, simply open your heart, seek the holy order, and learn to live the parable of being a Christed being. That's what the earth nurtures and supports now. And this allows the holy order to show, tell, and lead you, instead of you telling the holy order what it's allowed to be. And you see, and this is the origin of knowing consciousness. And you see, belief is the bottom rung of the ladder of consciousness. And when people were in the first and second paradigm, which was a totally miserable place to be, the first paradigm is death, destruction, killing, and war. The second paradigm is robbing, stealing, cheating, lying, and politics. And, you know, those kind of people are usually locked up in jail, or they're headed that way when they get caught, you know. And see, religions were created in the third paradigm. And you see, the people in the first and second paradigm, they were not capable of having a knowing consciousness. And so they needed this structure of belief to get them started into a holy order. And we've all seen religion go into prisons and take these people, and lo and behold, they come out of that and they become productive people in society. I mean, it's just amazing what religion has done for the first and second paradigm. So it brought people up the scale a little bit. And I definitely commend religion for that. They're one of the primary belief generators. But in order for belief to be a component of ascension, it has to be an open-ended belief that leads people to the truth. It can't be a box with a lid on it, or you're going to get stuck there, and you're going to be stuck in the third paradigm just like you was in the bottom two. And the third paradigm, where we're at, I'll tell you what that one's about. That's more common human misery, much less lethal than the first two, but it's like gossip, condemnation, criticism, self-pity, being judgmental, being self-righteous, and labeling others. That's the third paradigm. And the new holy old earth that's filling the void as this, and you see, the model of one, it goes from the first paradigm to the 12th. The 12th paradigm is awesome, man. That's the I am, you know, that's really good stuff. But there's an eye of the needle between the 12th and the 13th paradigm. The 13th is where the holy O begins, and things that are not whole cannot go beyond the 12th paradigm. Well, you see, the components of our divinity that were inside our soul vessel when we were holy beings, those are the only parts of our former holiness that are allowed to be up to the 12th paradigm, and that's your archangels, angels, ascended master, earth goddesses, and the like. The component controlled by self was always confined to the first three. And you see, it's these bottom three that are actually being exiting off of the earth now. They have to be purged out of people. It's a very disgusting experience to have to go through. It's like throwing up, you know. Nobody wants to do that. But it has to come up to come out in order for the holy old earth to fill us up again, you see. And I might as well tell you this now. In the bigger picture of things, and so you always have to go, you know, Einstein said this, and I'm sure you probably all know this, that you cannot heal the problems of the downfall world with the same level of consciousness that made the problem, you see. There's never going to be a war that's going to resolve war. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth is how you played tit for tat. It's never going to heal anything. And we know from our own experience that when negative situations happen in our life, if we match energy, it never heals it, it always escalates. And so you have to go to higher levels of consciousness. Well, you see, the new holy old earth starts at the 6th paradigm, goes to the 999 to the power of 7th paradigm, and this is where, through knowing and understanding, that you heal the issues of your downfall world that are from belief consciousness. And have you ever noticed that you cannot heal ignorance with belief? Because belief is really nothing more than your opinion with great conviction, because your negative ego governs it, but it's about the subjects of life you have no knowing about. You don't know. So this is your opinion about what you don't know, called belief. You know, when you understand the anatomy of it, it's not that impressive, you know. And so, and the weird thing about belief, well, there's a couple of them. One of them is you can't heal ignorance with belief. And the other one is, even though belief is the bottom rung of the ladder of consciousness, it wants to make up all the rules about what higher levels have to be, or it's not going to accept it. You know, and so it's not only ignorant, it's boneheaded. And so it just won't get you where you want to be. And all of humans' pain, misery, lack, and limitation of the bottom three paradigms is based on belief consciousness. And you know, that's the truth of it. Open-ended beliefs that lead people to higher truths are divine. They're wonderful, because we all went through the downfall. We all started out at the first paradigm. And you have to have a belief consciousness structure to get out of the bottom two paradigms. But from there on up, you've got to start working on knowing. And you see, in the new holy old earth, we are harvesting the understanding that we've acquired by going through this downfall world, and we're combining it with the knowing that we had from our original holy order. And the new holy old earth is the evolution of our holy order to no longer be a holy being of knowing consciousness, but to become a knowing being that understands all of life. It's the most awesome thing, and we're getting exactly what we wanted. We get an expansion of the 13th dimensional paradigm into an exponential time-space coordinate system. We just had to go to summer camp and go to the School of Understanding to get the understanding. And so the downfall world had a wonderful purpose to it. And it is the evolution of our holy order. And it is now, and you know, once that Exodus started back in September of 2015, about 4 months into it, these veils started being lifted off of aspects of our inner being. And the first one was the recording that I was telling you about, that I was gifted with being able to read when I was given my gift back in '94. Now all of you can do it. And the next veil that came off is that one of the components that go inside our soul vessel is called the 69th dimensional Omniverse of divine intervention. It has a sacred portal that's a multi-purpose portal, and one of its functions is we deposit our downfall rubble into this portal. It is stationed by the highest consciousness crystal light beings, And if there is any of fracturing parts and pieces of your former holiness, it will clear and cleanse them and bring it back to you. And then the third veil was lifted on New Year's of 2016, and that is that all people contain a method of reperfecting their being. I call it the perfectionator, and it is activated anytime you say, to Holy O pure perfection, to Holy O pure perfection, to Holy O pure perfection, 3 times. You say that 3 times, and it will take all of your fractures, parts, and pieces of your former holiness, respin it back into your holy order. And so we have every tool we need to overcome our downfall dilemma and to return to being holy beings of the Holy O once again. And so it's amazing, you know, and and to have awareness of this, it gives us so much hope, you know. And all things that prophesize the end of the world, it's because they're a part of the downfall world. And yes, it's leaving the planet, and it'll be out of here in September of 2021. And so that's not a false prophecy. It just doesn't apply to everyone. You don't have to be on that boat. You can be doing this other thing, you know, which is a wonderful place to be. And so life is quite the kick, you know, and we get to have this discovery and exploring, and it's all about learning to surrender your pain and misery to the higher power. Surrender is one of the most incredible tools we all have. You know, when I was going to chiropractic school in Kansas City, there was a locally famous artist there that I got to be friends with. I got to work on him. And one day I asked, Wayne was his name, I said, Wayne, what is your most prized tool as an artist? And he goes, well, that's easy. It's my eraser, you know? And that was like, wow, man, that really hits home. And so the component of surrender is your eraser of your downfall, pain, and misery. And as long as you want victory over the pain and misery of your life, and you don't have to be right and win, you can have it. But you'll never have both. You cannot be right and win and have victory over pain and misery. You have to surrender that. And then you can have anything. There's not an issue of the human creation that higher consciousness won't heal. And I know there's lots of healers in the room here, and I invite you today, and I give this to you freely, to start utilizing the Miglio-Maglius portal and the Perfectionator in what you do. But always put, when you're working on other people, you always put their downfall rubble into their Miglio-Maglius portal. Do not put it into yours, or you'll have problems. You put it into theirs, and you put yours into yours, and everybody's got one. And this is the way out of this thing. And so we have all the tools we need to become holy beings again, and we get to rise above all of the human condition and find the solutions to our life. And there's nothing that will make you more joyous and gracious than to heal the pain and misery of your life. Once we got to a certain point in this process of the downfall world exiting, all of the demonic beings, the entities, the things that would infest people back in the old Piscean age especially, that got into us to basically parasite our goodies, every single one of them now wants to leave and get on the boat that's going back to where they came from. They were brought in here as a service. They all want to leave now. And if you have chronic issues that you can't seem to kick, it's because you have a switch in you that will not allow them to leave. And that sounds bizarre. You know, everybody goes, well, I don't want demonics in me. Well, if you got a switch, the part of you that counts is not in agreement with your conscious thought. And those things have to be removed. Well, in our sessions of Holy Divine Healing today, everything I've told you today is demonstrated in the process of these healings. When I'm at your feet getting this information, I am the servant of your inner holiness, and we're going to do the parable of Christ consciousness. We're going to surrender to your inner holiness and allow your inner holiness to speak to your needs. And it'll tell me that we need to clear 8 things, say, and the first 3 of them will be beyond our comprehension. And that's not a problem when the holiness of life is running the show. That's only a problem if you're trying to figure it out. And so it's just beautiful how it'll all lay it out. And then once we get the clearing done, we've dug this huge crater into your being, and that crater is filled with a blessing from a much higher level of consciousness, and it heals. And that's how this stuff works. And so the private sessions, the group healings that we do are all about the parable of Christ consciousness. That is our 5th level of consciousness. The 6th is cosmic conscious. The 7th is goddess conscience. And we're going to be accessing all of that as we bring back our fractures, parts, and pieces are respun back into our holy order. And you know, these components of divinity that go in our soul vessel are actually the gifts of creation from initially the 13 galaxies of this cosmos, the God particle and all that stuff. Well, since those things got broken, fractured during the downfall experience, to make them whole again, they had to be made a part of a larger model, and 15 was chosen for whatever reason. And so there is now a bookend of the Holio underworlds underneath the low soul, and a Holio same androgyne over the God particle. And there were 2 new galaxies added to this cosmos. And so the patterning is all exactly the way it has to be. And so we can do this. Your inner holiness, and it's in there if your heart beats, knows all about this. And it only has to be surrendered to. And that's the key. You surrender all your problems to your higher power, your inner holiness. You show up in your day. You take your next step in trusting your inner holiness without having to understand what's around the corner, and you ask for guidance. The parable is on the back of the card that Terry has. You're welcome to have one. And so we're gonna stop there. But it's been such a joy to share with you today, and many blessings to you. We'll say a little prayer here. We're going to take a little ride through the 9 clusters and go back home. This blessing of our Holio same, with our perfected soul vessel and our ego body at peacetime, and the 15 components of our divinity spun into a Celtic loop and interconnected with the 15 galaxies of this cosmos that are interconnected with the 763 cosmoses of this universe, which are interconnected to the 62 million plus universes of the 9 clusters of the all that is of the Holio, which is interconnected into the 9 underworlds of this earth, 3 of Lemuria, 3 of Atlantis, 3 of Hyperborea, to create our perfect unconscious, subconscious, conscience, mass conscience, Christ conscience, cosmic conscience, goddess conscience into our androgyne function, with our 276 activities of higher consciousness performed on our inner web that extends from the crystal lattice of our Holy Spirit to the Holio temples of the neutron stars, where we harvest our knowing consciousness as gold, and our gold as knowing. Oh, connecting, amen, and oh, hallelujah. And it is done.